After spending a full year working with the original Hasselblad X2D camera, I felt a mix of excitement and skepticism when I first heard that Hasselblad was preparing a follow-up. The X2D camera was a beautiful, thoughtfully designed medium format camera that produced some of my favorite images ever, but as much as I loved it, the camera wasn't without its flaws. It was elegant and capable, yet a few key shortcomings held it back from being a camera I could fully rely on as a daily workhorse. So when whispers of the X2D II camera began to surface, my curiosity grew. Would this new version refine the magic and fix the quirks, or would it simply feel like a small step forward? The good news is that Hasselblad really listened. The X2D II camera feels like the same soul of the original wrapped in a much more refined, practical package. Many of the frustrations I had with its predecessor are now addressed, and in some areas the improvements are dramatic. It's not flawless, no camera ever is, but this is the first Hasselblad camera digital body in a long time that feels like it's inching into the territory of being a true all-around system. The foundation hasn't changed, it's still the same 100 megapixel camera medium format sensor with 16-bit color depth. But Hasselblad has pushed the dynamic range up to about 15.3 stops and introduced a base ISO of 50 instead of 64. These might sound like small technical tweaks, but the difference is noticeable when you're pushing shadows or chasing subtle tonal transitions in challenging light. The body design, ergonomics, and the minimal, responsive interface are still here, which is a relief since that was one of the best aspects of the first camera. Internal storage remains a massive 1 TB with CAF support as backup, still unmatched by the competition. All of that remains untouched, and rightly so, because those were already standout features. Where the X2D camera truly struggled, however, was autofocus. On the original model, autofocus felt serviceable but dated compared to what modern mirrorless systems offered. It was fine for static subjects, but once your subject started moving, the limitations were obvious. With the new X2D II camera, autofocus has leapt into a completely different class. The number of points has increased from 249 to 425, and Hasselblad camera has integrated a combination of improved phase and contrast detection assisted by a laser-based ranging system. In practice, this means it locks focus faster and with more confidence, even in dim situations. I tested it side by side with the original during a night shoot lit only by a campfire. The old body hunted endlessly before I gave up and switched to manual focus, while the new one snapped into focus without hesitation. Continuous autofocus is another area where Hasselblad has completely changed the game. The first X2D couldn't really track subjects. If you wanted to shoot portraits of a model who moved slightly, or even your dog running around, you'd lose sharpness instantly. Now the X2D II camera offers continuous subject tracking with eye detection for people, face tracking for animals, and even car detection. In my testing, it worked remarkably well, holding onto a subject's eye as they moved across the frame. With animals, it wasn't always perfect, sometimes focusing on my dog's nose instead of his eye, but it was far more usable than before. Car detection was solid too, although it had the quirk of sometimes clinging to a bumper or panel rather than a more intentional part of the vehicle. One hidden gem in the autofocus system is what Hasselblad camera calls arbitrary point tracking. Essentially, you can select a point in the frame, lock focus, and the camera will continue tracking that specific spot. It's an excellent tool for recomposing while keeping a subject locked, though it only works in certain focus modes. Combined with subject tracking, it turns the autofocus experience from a weakness into one of the camera's best strengths. I still rank Sony ahead in pure autofocus performance, with Nikon and Canon close behind, but Hasselblad has finally caught up enough to be a contender. Autofocus isn't perfect, though. Continuous tracking only works with newer lenses in the X2D lineup, leaving older lenses behind. It also isn't available when using the electronic shutter. And unlike Sony, the camera can't auto-detect and switch between subject types. If you're set to people and aim at a dog, it won't adjust. Still, the leap forward is so significant that the trade-offs are forgivable. Another frustration with the original X2D camera was button customization. The system was clean and user-friendly, but it lacked flexibility. The new model introduces two extra custom buttons, including clickable dials and another button on the rear. The customization menu is also far more comprehensive, though I still wish the FL and AL buttons could be reassigned and that custom buttons could trigger entire profiles. Switching shooting profiles still requires diving into the menu, which slows things down. Nevertheless, the progress here is meaningful and gives the camera a more adaptable, professional feel. One request many photographers had was for a joystick. The X2D camera forced users to rely on the touchscreen to move focus points, which felt clumsy in fast-paced situations. The X2D II camera finally includes a joystick. Hasselblad calls it a 5D button, but it's not without quirks. Positioned slightly too low, it's awkward to reach when using heavy lenses. Worse, its responsiveness is sluggish. Press in one direction, and the point moves a little, then pauses before moving further. Compared to Sony's lightning-fast joysticks, it feels imprecise and slow. Hasselblad could likely refine this with firmware, but as it stands, it's only partially helpful. The viewfinder was another source of annoyance on the first model. While the quality itself was excellent, the lag when switching from the rear screen to the VF was about half a second or more. Unfortunately, that delay hasn't been fixed. However, Hasselblad did redesign the tilting rear screen, which was partially blocked by the VF on the original. Now it pulls out and tilts in a way that clears the view completely, allowing both waist level and overhead shooting without obstruction. The display itself is also upgraded to a brighter, higher contrast OLED with HDR support and the P3 color gamut. It's crisp, vibrant, and finally worthy of a flagship camera. Speed is another mixed bag. Startup remains slow if the camera is fully powered off, so grabbing a quick candid shot isn't its strong suit. Burst shooting is limited to 3 frames per second, slightly slower than the first model, while Fujifilm's GFX lineup shoots twice as fast. But Hasselblad quietly added a major improvement. There's now no blackout in the VF or rear screen while shooting bursts. On the X2D camera, the display went completely black while firing a sequence, leaving you guessing about composition and timing. With the new system, you can see everything in real time. That single change makes the camera far more usable, even if the frame rate is modest. Durability is another area where the X2D camera was criticized. The paint chipped easily, making the camera look more worn than it really was. The new finish is a matte graphite gray with black lettering instead of white. It looks fantastic, almost like the Earth Explorer edition, and so far seems more resistant to scuffs. Time will tell how it ages, but at least cosmetically it's a step forward. One thing Hasselblad didn't really need to touch, but improved anyway, is image stabilization. The X2D camera already offered some of the best stabilization available, rated at 7 stops. The X2D II camera somehow pushes this to 10 stops. That's staggering, especially for someone like me who hates shooting on a tripod. Even at long exposures, the results are shockingly stable for handheld work. Combined with the HDR shooting capabilities, which integrate seamlessly with the new HDR-capable rear screen, this makes handheld shooting in tough lighting more practical than ever. Another underrated feature is the integration with the Focus mobile app. The ability to wake the camera remotely from a phone is a small but brilliant convenience. Imagine keeping the camera in your bag on the subway, quickly pulling a photo onto your phone without even taking the camera out. It's a subtle feature that changes how you interact with the system day to day. Of course, the X2D II camera isn't immune to criticism. The VF switching delay still lingers, the joystick needs refinement, and startup speed continues to be sluggish. Autofocus quirks with older lenses and the lack of automatic subject switching also keep it from dethroning Sony or Nikon in speed and versatility. But even with these shortcomings, it's astonishing how far Hasselblad has pushed the system in a single generation. And then there's the price. This is where Hasselblad pulled off a surprise. Despite improving nearly every aspect of the camera, the X2D II camera actually costs $800 less than its predecessor. At $7,400, it's still very expensive, but now it's more affordable than Fujifilm's GFX flagship and significantly cheaper than Leica's M11P. In a world where most camera manufacturers are raising prices, this drop makes the X2D II camera. After tallying up all the improvements, the verdict is clear. Hasselblad didn't create the perfect medium format system, but they came closer than ever before. The The X2D II camera transforms the experience from one of compromises into one of confidence. It's no longer just a beautiful object that excels only in controlled conditions. It's a camera you can actually take into more unpredictable environments and trust to deliver. No camera is flawless, and Hasselblad still has ground to cover in speed and customization. But for anyone who loved the X2D camera yet found themselves frustrated by its limitations, the X2D II camera feels like the camera Hasselblad should have built all along. It fixes almost everything, and in the process, it brings Hasselblad's digital medium format cameras into a new era where they're no longer niche tools for static work, but genuinely versatile creative machines. If you're tempted, I can't blame you, because for the first time in a long while, Hasselblad camera has built a system that feels as practical as it is beautiful.